My name is Jordan Parks, and I work at the University of Maine for the Weed Ecology Lab. Today we're here in Old Town, Maine at Rogers Farm, and we're going to talk about how to set up your physical weed control tools. The objectives of this video is to provide you with a set of steps to help you set up your physical weed control tools to optimize your weeding. We're going to be using sweeps and finger weeders in this example, but you can use this video to set up any other tool that you would be using on your toolbar or tractor. So it's important to have a good tool set up in order to save you time later. And so if you have your tool set too aggressively, it's going to be killing a lot of crop plants, even though you may be killing a lot of weeds. And on the other end of the spectrum, you can have weeding tools set not aggressive enough, and where you don't have any crop damage, but very little weed damage, which would result in having hand labor going out there to deal with those weeds later. So it's important to spend time to set up your tool optimally. So before you start weeding, it's important to have ideal conditions if possible. And what I mean by that is checking the weather. And so having sunny conditions with really hot temperatures, dry conditions is ideal. And this is so that all the weeds that you uproot or slice are going to desiccate on the soil surface. Also, if it's windy, that also helps with drying root systems and killing weeds. Another thing you want to check is your crop growth stage. You'll have to go into the field and look at your crop, and you could either pull up the crop plants to do like a tug test to see how well anchored they are in the ground. And you're going to want to do this before using certain tools because certain tools like finger weeders, they could be very damaging to crops that are very small. And so you want to plan your tools accordingly around your crop growth stage, whatever crop you are growing. And another thing to consider is the weed growth stage. So ideally you want them to be at the white thread stage. So they're going to be just white root systems under the soil, very small, or cotyledon stage to first true leaf stage. Anything larger than that is going to run into problems with most physical weed control tools. So if you can plan your timing for those smaller weed stages, that is ideal. So if you have a concrete slab in your barn or anywhere on your farm that is level, when you pull your tractor up to it, this is where we'll use duct tape and a tape measure to basically map out the bed underneath your tractor so you know where to attach your tools to the toolbar. So the first step you want to do is measure the width of your tractor from the center of your front tire to the center of your other front tire. So once you have that width, then you're going to find the center, and that's going to be the center of your bed. And then you will go from that point to the right and the left to find where your rows are. So now we have our center line and 10 inches from each row, which gives us a 20-inch row spacing with our 60-inch wide tractor. So today we're going to be cultivating with these European style sweeps, and we're also going to set up finger weeders. But first we're going to set up our sweeps with our guide wheels. So here we have our crop row, and so now we want to adjust our width of our sweeps. And so you can take your tape measure and put it in the center of your crop row here. And so let's say we want to have 3 inches from each side of our crop row. Here we'll do, this is just to get you in the ballpark, and then you can adjust more in the field as needed. So first I have this right one set, 3 inches. And now we're going to set our left. And you want to look for right of the tip of that sweep at 3 inches. And you can of course go closer or further away depending on your crop type or what you're looking for. All right, so this should give you a width of roughly 6 inches. So the next step in our process is to level our toolbar. And so first, to do that with these style sweeps is I'm going to loosen the adjustment bolt so the sweeps are free floating, and then lower the toolbar and level it with our 3-point hitch. So now that they're loose, we want to lower the bar so that we have enough play in our parallel linkage to go up and to also go down. So right around here is a good midpoint for using this style of sweep. So next, you want to take a level, and whether you have a contractor's level or a torpedo level, go ahead and put it on your toolbar. So here we're just a little bit off, so I'm going to adjust our 3-point hitch here, which could look different on your tractor. So now we're at that 0 point, so now we have a level toolbar. And so usually I check this at multiple points, especially if I have a small level like this. So we're good. So once you have leveled your toolbar, the next step is to adjust your depth with your sweeps. And so to do this, you're going to need some sort of object that is the same width as the depth you want. So here I have, we're going to do some shallow cultivating today, so I have a 1/4 inch piece of board here. And so you could either use metal or wood, whatever you have, as long as it's the depth you want. And you can have 1/2 inch, 3/4, all the way up to 1 inch. And so today we have our 1/4 inch board, and this is going to go underneath our guide wheels, and which will set our depth for the sweeps. So the first step is to make sure that your adjustment bolt is loose so that your sweep is free. Next, you're going to take your spacer board and put it underneath your guide wheel. The next step is you're going to let the sweep fall onto the floor, and then you're going to tighten. And so this is why it's important to have some sort of level surface so that when you drop the sweep to the floor, it is actually the depth that you are looking for. When you're adjusting your toolbar, you may want either a level toolbar or you might want to adjust your 3-point hitch to give different angles for different levels of aggressiveness depending on your crop or your weed type. And so with this sweep here, which is what we have on the toolbar right now, and this is more of a European style sweep, so it's very flat and does really well for shallow cultivation. And so if you want to do more hilling in your crops, you might want to adjust your 3-point hitch so that your sweep is angled a little bit towards away from you, like so, which will throw more soil into the crop row and over the weeds. But if you don't want to do that, you might want to adjust your toolbar so that it is nice and level, not disturbing a lot of soil. And same goes for tilting it back a little bit, which is going to give you even more shallow cultivation. So now we're going to put our finger weeder attachment on, and this could be whatever tool that you want to set up next after your sweeps. And for this, we have a floating arm cultivator that we're going to attach over our crop row. So for this attachment, we're just going to mount the floating bar roughly over our crop row. So over time, you'll find where to hook these different types of implements. And usually what I do is either, take a Sharpie or a paint marker, or you could even scratch the paint on your toolbar to mark the center lines of where these tools go. Mounting finger weeders on our tractor, and so you can manipulate your finger weeder's tool angle in order to change what happens in your soil. And so right now we have a perpendicular angle, which is going to be your standard angle. This is on a lot of tools, and this is basically the standard. So on this particular tool, we're able to adjust the angle directly right here, but you can also do what I'm doing with the 3-point hitch if you wanted to try this. And so tilting your finger weeders like this will have more of a hilling mechanism in your crop row. And then going the other way, tilting them forward is going to have more of a scrubbing mechanism where it's flicking weeds out of the row. And so today we're going to be running our finger weeders at a 90-degree angle. We're using finger weeders today in order to get those hard-to-get weeds in what we call the intra-row zone, which is in between crop plants. So there's going to be many different weeds right next to the crops, and so the fingers can get very close and in between crop plants to kill those weeds. So the next thing we want to adjust is our finger weeder spacing. And so you could either have it how we have it set up right now, which is at a 1-inch gap over the crop row. So the fingers are going to be like this. But you can also adjust them in more for more aggressive setting to either touching, or you could even overlap your finger weeders as well for more aggressive. Out at the field, and we're ready to cultivate and do our finer adjustments to our tools. So after adjusting our sweeps, which I'm pretty happy about the width, that they are at right now. Now we're going to adjust the width of our fingers and also move them over, because it looks like we have this left one here too far in our crop row. So line them up the best you can, and then to check your width, you just pull the fingers up towards you, and then this gap right here is what you'll measure as your finger weeder spacing. So after you've cultivated about 10 feet in your field, you're going to want to stop the tractor and come back and look at what you've cultivated. So the setting we have here looks like it's doing quite a good job on getting weeds on next to the crop row, but we're still having issues with weeds in the intra-row zone or in between crop plants. And so there's very minimal damage to these beets from the fingers, and basically you want to go through and just do a tug test on the crops and just see if they come out or not. If it's really aggressive, the crop plant will just come right out. But you're just looking for, if they're well anchored in the soil. And since we're cultivating beets, you want to look for any leaf damage or any other sort of damage to the beets, which we are not seeing here in this crop row. And so now we're going to adjust our fingers in more and see what kind of crop damage we have, and see if we can increase our efficacy on weeds. So now we adjusted our fingers so that they're touching to see if they're a little more aggressive in our soil. And so when we look in our crop row, definitely some of the smaller beets here have basically been uprooted out of the soil. The bigger ones seem to still be pretty well anchored. So crop damage is minimal, but it is starting to happen in these conditions. We were also able to kill some bigger weeds in the crop row. As you can see down here, we have this large pigweed and purslane uprooted out of the soil. We still have some well anchored in between our crop plants. So next we're going to adjust it in a little more and see if we can make it more aggressive. So on our tool here, we have the ability to change the angle of our finger weeders. Now, if you don't have this ability on your tool, which most finger weeders are at a 90-degree angle from the soil surface. And so what I would suggest is adjusting your spacing closer. But so for this tool, since we have the ability to, we're going to change the angle back so that it uses more of a hilling mechanism in the beet row. And we're going to see if this is at our aggressive range. So then we will have our highest aggressive tool setting, and then our lowest, and then we want to pick something that is right in the middle, that has the right ratio of crop damage to weed damage. So here we have a prime example of why you should test your tools in more aggressive settings. So we adjusted what we thought would be more aggressive, but it turned out to be definitely a lot better than when we had the fingers touching at a 90-degree angle. And so now we have some hilling in the row, which is able to bury and uproot some of those weeds in between the crop plants. And we have minimal crop damage. So you can see down here, we do our tug test. A lot of the bigger beets are well anchored, but we also have lots of weed damage in the row, and they're also buried. So this, with this setting, I would consider this probably my optimal for these conditions in our crop growth stage for what we have out here. And yeah, so we're gonna have to go a little more aggressive. So now we adjusted our spacing to have the fingers overlap. And I have them set roughly between 1/4 and 3/8 of an inch for the overlap. And we have it at the same angle for the hilling mechanism. And so I think this is where our aggressive setting will be. We have some large crop plants that we uprooted completely out of the ground, and some of the leaves were cut as well, and some of our smaller crop plants were buried. And so this is what I would consider our aggressive higher end setting for our conditions and the tool that we're using. So you can see here we have this beet, pretty big size beet that was completely uprooted out of the soil. And many of these are, this one was uprooted too, it looks like. So these are pretty big, so I wouldn't cultivate this field at this setting. You can see all these are just coming out. And obviously you're gonna have higher weed control with this, but at the cost of damaging more of your crop. And so I think our last setting with the fingers touching as well with the angle would be our optimal setting for our conditions and our crop size. So the types of tools that you're going to be running are going to vary as well. And so you're going to want to, make adjustments to either speed or depth or tool angle. And all of these factors are going to change with what kind of tool you're using. So if you're using sweeps, depth and speed might be very important to your results that you will have. But that's also going to change, as you saw with our finger weeder example. So you can have either tool angle or tool spacing, as well as depth. So I hope this video helped you. And don't forget to take time to, use your tools in your field before settling on any final adjustments. So making those fine-tune adjustments are going to help you in the long run. And also it's important to spend time to, set up your tools before you get to the field so that it saves you time while you're in the field making those minor adjustments.